Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Through the Fire in the SBN Small Business Network podcast. I am your host, Ryan Wickline, and today we have a very extraordinary guest who's seen a lot of stuff in this day and age. He is the founder of Wings for Heroes, Loo-beem Kogan. How you doing today, Loo-beem?
I am doing well, Ryan. Thanks for having me. Glad to be
Hey,
here.
it's my pleasure, man. I love your story. When I seen your story, I was like, wow. He's a
Thank you.
testament of what somebody who just puts their mind to something can do.
Thank you. I'd love to share it with the audience and add some value. So, what would
So
you
the
like to know?
Yeah. So the number one question the audience probably wants to know is, who is Loo-beem Kogan?
Just briefly, I'm five-time first-generation immigrant. I came to the United States back in 1992. I had a lot of dreams, and I worked super hard. I graduated from New York University Stern School of Business. And while I was at NYU, I was the first person to qualify for the Winter Olympics while being a full-time student. Then after NYU, I got a chance to work in the World Trade Center. That was another big of my dreams. And later on, I got a chance to co-author a book with Steve Forbes and speak with Brian Tracy at the United Nations. And after that, it was 2015. I disappeared for 10 years. I didn't stay in the spotlight and enjoyed the celebrity status in the United States. I went to Ukraine as an American, and I was rebuilding what war had torn apart, because the war in Ukraine started back in 2014 with annexation of Crimea, and it went full scale in 2022, and I actually left Ukraine right before the war started. But I left Ukraine maybe physically, but the Wings for Hero is the organization that takes care of amputees. And my first, I don't even know how to say it, clients, or the first amputees that we flew in Wings for Heroes, we basically take amputees flying with paragliders. They were from Ukraine, and my goal is this year is to cross back to the United States. And actually, I'm thinking about looking at November, to fly in San Diego in Torrey Pines. So I'd say I am the guy who could not look away. When I see somebody in need, I stay. And if I have some goals that are important to me, I go after it.
Yeah. So you mentioned you're a five-time immigrant.
Yes.
How difficult has that transition been to you, like moving to different countries?
Every time it becomes easier and easier. The most difficult was the first one, because it was going from, I was born in the former Soviet Union, and I grew up in the 70s and the 80s. I'm a child of the Cold War, and my image of the United States was that President Reagan is sitting in his office and he has this red button and he could hit that red button at any time and we're finished. And then I find out that a lot of people who grow up in the same age in the United States, they had the same picture of the Soviets, that they had that red button. So I guess kids have the same imagination if you tell them the story. And I guess I know how propaganda works. When I came to the States in '92, I found it to be totally different. America was super generous to me. I wanted to continue skiing. I ski jumped. And we came to New Jersey. My uncle lived there for 4 years already. And I asked him to find me a place where I could ski. And he wrote to all the schools on the Northeast and the National Sports Academy in Lake Placid. They invited me to meet them. It was a small boarding school. And they gave me a full scholarship. So I got to live there. I got to learn English. They fed me. And they gave me skis, and they said, outside of school, you can ski as much as you want to. So I consider myself to be really lucky to experience that generosity. And I think when you jump on some wavelength, emotionally, then you start attracting things. And I've experienced the generosity of American people throughout my life. I spent 23 years in the United States before I went back to Ukraine, and I actually stayed in Ukraine as an American. Yeah. that's briefly. And then from there, so going back to Ukraine, after I ran a company, I got a chance to run a nationwide company. It was an infrastructure company. And if you could imagine that when the war starts, then all the plans go out the business, and all the playbooks that they had, they went out the window, and people always, or the management acted as, when they went through downtimes before, they did a certain thing and it always worked out because downtimes then turned around and the company kept growing and growing. But right before I got there, they expanded. They used to be a regional operator and they went nationwide by acquiring debt and acquiring it in the US dollars. When Crimea was annexed, the currency collapsed and the US dollar tripled in value, or local currency collapsed, divided by 3. The volumes got cut in half. Then the volumes of sales got cut in half again. But they wanted to maintain their excellent credit rating, so they kept servicing their debt. And at some point, at the point when I got there, they were using cash flow, operational cash flow, to service the debt. And that's actually a recipe for disaster. So at the time when I took over the company, it was 2 pay periods behind. And after, in the 90s, so 92, when the Ukraine became an independent country, what happened was that huge infrastructure or this huge structure where the money was coming from, from central planning from the government to each republic, each of the 15 former Soviet Union republic, that ended. And now you have a country that is independent, and people weren't paid the salary because things were tough. So the whole country was starving, and the government got really tough in the 90s. And they said, if you miss 3 pay periods, it's criminal prosecution for the management. That's the only way they were able to make the companies pay their employees. And I stepped in at the worst possible time. I said yes because I saw that people really looked at me like at their last hope. And then I realized that the war was for real. The Russian soldiers didn't wear flags. They took off all their flags from their shoulders. So it were green soldiers, and it was called a terrorist operation. But it was a real war. It was geographically removed. It wasn't a full scale, but still, because we were nationwide, when I started traveling, going east and south, I really saw what was going on. And then I already said yes, so I had no choice but to finish my work.
Did you qualify for the Winter Olympics in ski jumping then?
Mm-hmm. I did. And it's actually a good example of be careful what you wish for. Because when we came to the States, I tell everybody I had 2 dreams. One was my dad's and one was mine. My dad's dream was that I would go to a really good school, and preferably a business school. And my dream was to ski in the Olympics. So after the first year, I spent the year at the National Sports Academy. I learned English as much as I could. And then I went to a small community college, and I basically needed to learn English. And after graduating from a community college, I get accepted to NYU, and I get to New York City and realize that I have a 600-mile commute every weekend if I wanted to ski. So I finished my classes on Thursday afternoon. I would walk to my dorm, I would change, then I would walk to the bus station, and I would take a bus from New York City to Albany. In Albany, I would pick up my car and drive to Lake Placid. So Albany was exactly halfway. It's 150 miles to Albany, and then I would drive 150 miles to Lake Placid. It's in the Adirondacks Park. And I would ski Friday. So Friday night I would get there. I would ski I would get there on Thursday night. I would ski Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then on Sunday night, I would come back. Unless it was a competition season, because during competition season, we went to different hills in New Hampshire, Vermont, and sometimes as far as Maine. And imagine, like, you compete all weekend, you have award ceremony on Sunday, and after that, it was impossible to go anywhere because you're so exhausted that I stayed and I caught the first bus, and I came back to New York City early in the morning, sometimes just in time for my classes. And that went on for more than 2 years. So before even qualifying, before even having a chance to qualify for the Olympics, I did that 600-mile trip. And now I'm more careful with my wishes, but it seems that the universe has a different plan for me, and it seems like things are getting more difficult. I thought I would know more and things would get easier, but I think the more you know and the more experience you have, the more life throws at you. But yes, I qualified for the Olympics. It was in 1998 in Nagano, Japan, and I think I'm really lucky that I qualified for the one in Japan, because the next one were in Salt Lake City, and I can go to Salt Lake City pretty much anytime. So I got to get on the plane and fly for a really, really long time to Japan and see that amazing country.
Awesome. What type of mindset did it take, like during your training and everything, to actually qualify for the Olympics and then go compete in the Olympics?
It's like there's only one thing that you can do. That's the mindset. Like, I am doing it. I am there. I knew that it was a big stretch, but in terms of doing the work, you know that you cannot skip anything. And if you are an underdog like I was, I'm not one of those super talented guys and girls, that will win medals. And I knew that for me to make the team was a really, really long stretch. And fortunately, I loved skiing. And I tell everyone that throughout my entire life, I noticed that, like we have this internal compass. Like when you feel that something wants to come out, like you get an idea, right? An idea comes to you, or you want to do something. And a lot of times the head starts thinking, and you start thinking about, whatever it may be. But sometimes you have this feeling like, and when I get that feeling like something wants to come out, like I really want to do it, it's the connection that I noticed, then I really pursue it. I go after it and I see if it develops stronger. But at that time, I was 17 years old when I came to the States. That was in 92. Olympics were in 98. So it was 6 years. And it was the time that I really enjoyed doing my sport. If there were no Olympics, if there was nothing, if there was just a ski jump standing somewhere, I would probably jump anyways. So enjoying the process is really important. Like enjoying what you're doing is really important, because it's not easy. I sacrificed my college experience. I don't know what college experience is like. I see it in the movies. I hear it from different friends, but I went out 3 times in all my 4 years of university, and that includes my graduation. So I basically sacrificed it all to go after one thing. And I think that if you are giving up your most valuable asset, which is your time, we never get back our time, no matter what we do. Then it becomes somewhat, I don't want to say easier, but it becomes meaningful. And when you're doing something meaningful, it's easier to keep that mindset that I'm going to make it, whatever it takes. Yeah. If you want to like put it in one sentence, this long answer, I will do whatever it takes for as long as it takes. And as you go through and you keep going, you see people dropping off left and right. They're just stopping. And I'm sure you see it in your life, and everybody sees it. Anyone who is successful, they know that they're successful because they just did that extra step or two, or a year or 10 years. But it doesn't really matter. Things are done, but they're not done on our time, not on our schedule, and not on our clock. So the attitude is, I will do whatever it takes for as long as it takes.
Man, I love that attitude. I mean, and you're kind of a testament to that, to watch how much you traveled on weekends just to go train when other people were that are closer and didn't have to travel as far, probably didn't put in as much work as you did.
But that's the thing. I think that was my edge. When we the 97, 98 winter was one of the warmest winters on record. And if you ever seen the ski jump, it's basically a ramp, right? You go down the ramp, then you go 60 miles an hour head forward, then you split your skis and you fly in between your skis. That was my sport. And we were in Poland, and the organizers, they closed the hill because they needed to work on it 24/7 to get it ready for the World Cup. And the World Cups are normally on the weekends. You have Friday official training, Saturday day one competition, and then Sunday day two competitions, and then it's all done. Everybody moves to a different place. And it's warm, it's raining, and they were packing by feet this whole ski jump day and night, and they were trying to keep the rain and the water off the hill just enough for it to last for the weekend. So they closed it. Normally you can come and you can practice on it, but that year the hill was closed. So what we had to do, if you look at the map, when we finished, we were in a place called Zakopane, which is in Tatra Mountains in Poland. So every morning we got on the team bus. Well, it wasn't a team bus; it was just a little car that we all got onto, and we had to cross the Tatra Mountains into Slovakia. We get there, we jump in the morning, we have lunch, we jump in the afternoon, and then we drive back to Poland. And we do it the same the next day. So when the competitions came, I think that the national team athletes who were training, and that was their full-time job. I was at NYU commuting to Lake Placid, but they just show up. When you're a national team athlete, everything is planned for you for the whole year. We have 20 World Cups, so you know when and where you're moving. That is very structured, that is very set, it's very predictable in terms of planning. But that year, because of the weather, it was not like that. So I think by the time we got to the competitions, we had really bad weather and they were just exhausted. So I was able to grab that third spot. And I say I got lucky because I trained for more than 2 years practicing that commute all by myself.
Yeah.
And when the time came to perform, I just had a little bit more, I had a leg up on all of them. And one of the guys that went to the Olympics, he was the super athlete. He was one of those talented guys. The second guy was at his peak. And then there were like 4 or 5 of us competing for the third spot. And I just performed on that day better than all the guys that I didn't need to get the first place. I just needed to get the third place. And that's, you train your whole life, then you add 2 more years of commutes like I told you about, and then you're put on the spot. Here's your chance. You do it or you don't do it. And I was able to do it.
That's awesome. What advice would you give to athletes who want to compete in the Olympics themselves? To all the younger athletes?
I would say you got to understand that today, I thought we were pushing the envelope, okay, in the 90s. And now I watch my sport and I don't even recognize it because it went into space. It's not like next level. It's a completely different ball game. So most of the sports that you do right now, you really need to be prepared for injuries, because you're always pushing. You're like at that red line, and the modern sports they really expanded what's possible. So you are basically risking your life, and I think that you need to love your sport and be totally dedicated to that sport. And if you ever make it, it's for life. 1998 was almost 30 years ago, right, Ryan? We're looking at 30 years, like in just a few years. But if you're an Olympian, it's for life. So think about this, that you will do something for a short period of time, 4 years, 8 years, I don't know, depending on the age. I think if they're listening to podcasts, so they probably have 8 years maximum, But it's an amazing thing, because you will be a part of a special group of people that the rest of the world looks up to. And it opens a lot of doors. I'm not sure which one is more prestigious. Yeah, going to the Olympics is more prestigious than going to the New York University, because there are tens of thousands of people that go into that wonderful school. But there's just a handful of people who are Olympians. And if you do it one time, it will stay with you forever. And once you walk through that, everybody walks through the Olympic tunnel, because you're standing outside of the stadium, there is a tunnel. Once you walk through that tunnel, you just join a group of people that the whole world knows that you dedicated your life to your sport, and you are different, not because you're some kind of special person, but because you're special in the sense that you know what a commitment is. I think it's all about commitment. It's nothing else but a commitment, and commitment means I'm doing this, and I'm doing this no matter what. And skiing, you spend a lot of time looking at the ceiling, and it's really lonely. So if you're an athlete, just get ready that you're going to be doing it alone, and it hurts a lot. And having a family that is behind you is super important. So just make sure that your parents are on your side. Even though my dad wanted me to go to a business school, he always supported my skiing. And to me, it was important. He put me on skis when I was little. I was begging him to take me skiing with him. I said, I will not say a word. I will go and do anything. And he said that he told me that you were like a suitcase without a handle. Like anywhere I went, you went. And you never complained, and you never said anything, even from the little baby age. He said, I see you trying to lift your stuff, you can't, and still, you just zip it and you do it. And enjoy it. It's the most important thing. Like, enjoy the process and know that we are all human beings. I think this is one of the biggest secrets. We are all human beings, and even the best athletes, they're human beings, and they may have a bad day. And when they have a bad day and you have a good day, then you may get lucky, and go to the Olympics. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
So just make sure that you know that it's worth it. Love your sport. And if injuries come, you need to approach it that every injuries that I remember laying on whether it was going into operation table or recovery, always you will come back stronger and you will know more. I know torn ACLs are one of the worst injuries to have, but I came out of my torn ACL and I've never been stronger than that moment. I hope
Great
that
advice.
answers your questions.
Yeah, that's some great
There's
advice.
so many things.
Yeah.
There's so many things. Like, what do you say to a kid? Just, if it's your dream, do it. It's one life, and if you don't go for it, I am. For me personally, Ryan, I have this fear of being on my deathbed and wishing that I did something. That is one of my biggest fears. Like, I really think that Steve Jobs, he left us not only iPhone and Mac, and this wonderful company, Apple. He left us a lot of messages. That guy got up every morning and he said, look, if I'm doing something, like, do I love what I'm doing? And if the answer is no, then I really need to change. He really said that, and he died early. He died early and built this amazing company. So to me, he's one of the people who verbalized what I felt inside. And I really think about it that one day I will be dying, and I hope it's later than sooner, but I think I'll be okay. Like, my consciousness is clear. I cannot think of one thing that was important to me that I didn't do, that I didn't go after.
I love that mindset that you have right there. So you mentioned that you worked at the World Trade Center. What was it like during 9/11, and how did that event change you?
Well, we briefly talked about that before we started. I know that you remember it, right?
Yeah.
Everybody remembers that day. I think that day changed everybody. I'm not just the one who was changed because I was there. I think everyone, not in the United States, anywhere I go, people remember where they were. That's the interesting thing about 9/11. People around the world remember. Like, I told you that we take amputee veterans to fly with paragliders. And the paraglider is basically this little plastic bag that hangs above your head. It has little strings, and you're hanging in the backpack. There is no fuselage, there is no engine. It's free flying, and you're like thousands of feet above the earth. And if you fall, you splash, and it's the end of the story. But my instructor, the guy who signed my license, he got his license on 9/11. And he remembers where he was. He's Austrian, and he remembers where he was. He actually became a world champion later with his cousin. They do synchro, they fly together and do tricks, which is an insane sport. But like, people in Austria remember where they were on the day, and anywhere you go, people remember. I think how it changed me was that I always thought I felt so safe in the United States, that since Pearl Harbor, there was no attacks on the United States, so it could be that you could say this is the safest place on earth to live if you think about wars. And I'll just back up really briefly. I grew up during the Afghanistan war. It started when I was 5, and it lasted until I was 16. So I saw what was happening. I saw the consequences and the results of when one nation is going and it's at war somewhere else. Of course, now I see it here, but at that time, when you're a kid, you see all these guys, young guys, come back. They're handicaps, they have serious PTSD issues, serious drinking, because there was no system that supported them. And even in the United States, we have the strong system that supports veterans, but that traumatic experience is just too much for most people. We're not designed to go to war and see how people die, and especially, somebody next to you, having explosions next to you that shake every molecule in your body, and that comes out later. So I really felt safe. And the next day, I remember standing. If you look at the map of Manhattan, like the Hudson River is on the west side, and if you look, I was north. I was the World Trade Center used to be in Battery Park City, which is the southern tip of Manhattan. The next morning, I was north from it, and I was looking down, and I remember this smoke blowing across the river. It was going like towards southern Jersey, like Jersey City and the Statue of Liberty. And I lost that feeling of complete safety on that day. Like you feel violated in the worst possible sense. And since after that, I am a mountain person. I love nature. I love outdoors. And New York is not nature. It's a jungle, but it's a concrete jungle. And the following day, I knew that I'm done with New York. I finished NYU and I worked in the World Trade Center, and now it's no more. So there's nothing really for me to do there. And I got in the car and I went to Colorado. And from there, I just stayed for a little bit until I got an offer from a company in California. I went to work to California, but California is 3 hours behind New York, and the stock market opens. My job was I was in trading desk. So I had to get up in California time. It's like 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever. And then you drive, and then you finish super early. You don't really feel like going to bed. Plus the culture was totally chill. When in New York, everybody's like super cutthroat and competitive. California is like really easygoing, and it didn't work out for me. So I went back to Colorado, and then I got an offer in Texas. But the reason I'm telling you that I moved so many times was because my place of work was destroyed in an act of terror. So technically, by moving around and looking for a new place, I was classified as a displaced person. And the American Red Cross sent me a check for $15,000 to help me start over. So that was, another act of generosity, unexpected from anywhere else. And finally, in 2003, I came back. I got an offer from American Express in Colorado, and I went there and I stayed until 2015, until I left. But how it changed me, first of all, it physically moved me out of New York. It really was the end of me living in New York. And when I started my business in 2004, I was homeless for 1 year. So it's actually started the chain of events that kept adding to that. People say resilience. I say being really nutty and going after your dreams, because I think I really went mad at that time. When you don't imagine, like I come in 92, and then I'm working in the World Trade Center. I have a great job, and then I'm homeless. So it was like from nothing to what I wanted to have, again to nothing. And that's like, once you experience success, financial success, it is really, I don't want to pick a negative word. I cannot think of a word that I can say, but it was really bad. It was really crappy to be down. And I had to hustle, my back was to the wall again. And one thing is that when you're a first generation immigrant, there is no home that you can go back to. There is no mom and dad, there is not a place where you were born. There is no friends that you went to high school with or college. I skipped my college to the point that I think I haven't seen the yearbook for New York University for a graduating class, but my picture is not there because I was gone. I was training for the Olympics and I missed all the photo shoots that they were setting up and having it. So, getting out of situation when you're homeless, it really changes you. I think it creates another layer of fear inside of you. So you have this layer where it's not safe anymore. That's one thing that changed. Another thing is that one outside event can take everything, meaning financial security. That's another thing. So it changed the lenses that I saw the world through. It was like rose-colored glasses came on. I don't want to say that I got like these black shades, but the world was not rose-colored anymore after that. I saw the toughness and the reality and how fast it can change. And, one thing that I want to share with your listeners, look, you can do everything right. You can make all the right choices. You can make all the right steps. But if life has some other plan for you, it will change. It could change in one day. It could change in a year. But you may be in a situation where you may have to travel a path that you didn't expect it, and there are two choices. You do it or you don't do it. And if you don't do it, I think you will always regret it. And if you do it, you will have to learn how to be alone, because there will be people along the road that will tell you, oh, why are you doing this, Ryan? Like, why do you need to start podcasting? There's so much competition and you can use your time for something else, but you really have to focus on what you're doing. And sometimes you need to shut off everyone, and that includes your close family. Because is it okay if I talk a little bit about the inspiration for Wings for Heroes?
Yeah, that's what my next question was going to be. That's what my next question was for you anyways. Can you explain what it is?
Okay, so basically, one of the things is that we're not doing anything. We are not the first in anything anymore. Like, everything has been done before us. There are people that traveled the path of difficulties, and there are people that have done things that are bigger than you. Or if we put everyone collectively, somebody started all the wonderful organizations that exist. And this last winter, I went around the world. I just wanted to see how different societies and different countries keep their promises to the veterans that they made. And one of my stops was Geneva, Switzerland. And by accident, I ended up in the Red Cross Museum, because it is right across the street from the United Nations. And I found out that back in 1859, there was a Swiss banker whose name was Henry Dunant. And he was traveling for business to Italy on the banking business. And he arrived to a place called Solferino when one of the biggest battles was fought. And it was Austro-Hungarian army, which had like 170,000 soldiers. They met the Imperial Army, which is France and Italy, about 150,000 soldiers. And they went it so hard that at the end of the day, there were more than 40,000 people that were dead and wounded. And he said that nobody was helping. Like, whoever could walk away, crawl away, they crawled away. But whoever was injured that could not get up and crawl or walk on his own, they were just left there to die. It was June, I think, 25th. It was a super hot day. So he saw that suffering, and he organized the villagers from around, and mostly at that time they were women. And regardless of what side the soldiers were, they started pulling the ones that were alive and injured. And he says that some churches had more than 1,000 injured soldiers. And it took them more than a week, I think, to get all the people out. And when he was finished, he went back to Geneva, and he wrote a book that is called A Memory of Solferino. And that book got such wide recognition that he started the Red Cross after writing that book. So one thing that I am thinking about when I am out of options, because, first of all, for 2 years, this is a self-funded mission. I started doing podcasts in May to raise awareness and raise funding for the mission. But sometimes it seems hopeless, it's like you run out of all the choices. I have over 50,000 amputees out there that I need to take care of, and very few people who are willing to step up and help. And I think that on those days, what would happen if Henry Dunant stopped? Today, the Red Cross has more than 11 million volunteers across the globe. And one of the biggest things that they do is that they go in the war zones and they collect names. So on my website, wingsforheroes.org, if you scroll down to the bottom, there are videos. And there's a video that I made from the Red Cross, and it's basically when the Red Cross goes in the conflict zone, it's like a small card like this, and they put a name on it, and they just write, they write the information. And in the Red Cross Museum in Geneva, they have over 6 million cards. Like, it's endless, you walk in and it's like from floor to ceiling. And if you think about the fact that having a family member who's a prisoner of war or missing in action is one of the worst things that anybody can experience in their life, because there is no closure. They always wonder. So if a soldier is dead, then you can go through the grieving process. But if they're missing, there is no grieving process. It's torture for the rest of the life. So just by recording the names, they are providing relief to people who would never have it and would suffer for the rest of their lives. And having 11 million volunteers is a huge statement. After starting the Red Cross, the first Geneva Convention was signed in 11 months. And basically it says, if there is a war, this is how we treat, injured soldiers. And now they stipulate how we treat prisoners of war and innocent bystanders, because when the war comes in any region, there are always civilians who get hurt. It's practically impossible to have a war and not injure innocent bystanders. So, he created an organization that wrote the Geneva Convention and had other countries sign the Geneva Convention. But what happened when Red Cross started growing was that Henry Dunant got pushed out of the Red Cross, and the lawyers took over of that successful organization, and he disappeared for more than 20 years. And somebody found him 20 years later working in a hospice in Zurich. And the guy didn't have anything, he was destitute. And if that hospice did not give him a little place to live in, he would be homeless. So a few days ago, I turned 50 and my dad calls me and says, "Hey, Loo-beem, what's the guy who started the Red Cross?" I said, "Henry Dunant, Dad." He's like, "Okay, I just want to make sure that you don't want to end up like that guy." Destitute. He said, "How did he end up?" I said, he was living in a little place, and the hospice was taking care of him. But at the end of his life, Henry Dunant was, when they found him in Zurich, he was recognized by becoming the first recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. And that medal is also in that museum. So there are always two things, there is one where you go after something just because the money is important to you and you will have a lot of money. And I hope that you're happy, but most unhappy people I've met, and the most unhappiest time that I remember in my life when I had the most amount of money. I thought it would solve all my problems and all my issues. And I found out when I got there, it was just empty. And the relationship that was important to me that I had while working towards what I thought was the goal, it somehow got destroyed on the way, little by little, but it fell apart. And it was like, how you cannot glue back a broken china plate. That was the situation that I found myself in. And I think this day and age, there is a lot of motivation and there is a lot of things that are going on with, social media. When I went to college, we were the first the first year that required to have a laptop at New York University. Okay, so imagine now you say we didn't have laptops. It was not a normal thing. We didn't have messengers. We didn't have anything. But yeah, the most meaningful things took me a long time to get to, you know, like the dreams and the goals. I had some goals that I worked for decades, and, you know, flying to learn paragliders, I started flying at 42. It took me 6 years to get my tandem pilot license, and it was one of the most satisfying things. And I think when I was chasing money, I was lost. I thought I knew it all, and when I had it, I was like super smart and super duper, like the coolest guy in the world. But the reality, it was not the truth. When I got what I thought, what I wanted, I realized that the relationship and people and connections and being a human being is more important than having all the money in the world. And now running this mission, it's hard work in terms of you have to do a lot of things. You know, I just had one amputee. The guy in the middle, he's the first passenger that we flew. Can you see it, Ryan?
Yeah.
So you see the one leg that he has.
Yeah.
He puts all the pressure on that leg, and he put so much pressure that his muscles got so compressed that they started pushing on his sciatic nerve. And the sciatic nerve, it runs from somewhere in your back all the way down your leg. And I took him to my physical therapist, and basically, just briefly, Wings for Heroes is how my mind works. Is that first time I went flying, I got really scared. Like, I thought I was gonna die, man. I said goodbye to my dad. I started saying goodbye to my brother, and then I said, I don't even know that guy behind me. We just met, right? And here I am, thousands of feet above the earth. But after we landed, I was so scared that I knew I had to learn how to do it myself. And I needed to learn to become good enough to fly other people, because it's that experience, you know, when you are going off the cliff, your subconscious mind knows that you will die. It doesn't matter how brave you are, how crazy. We have that primordial brain that is designed to protect us. And when you take that last step and there's a cliff, you know, like inside it thinks that it's the end. So I thought, and you don't have any problems. That's the thing. I didn't have any problems with that except one. I wanted to live. I was running, I had 2,000 plus employees, and I didn't know how I'm going to pay their salaries. I didn't know how we're going to live tomorrow. You know, it was just like uncertainty everywhere. And I'm talking about working in Ukraine. Like, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And here I am thinking about, I just want to live. I don't care what happens tomorrow. I just want to see tomorrow. So my idea was that if I take somebody who had such a huge loss and we go off the cliff, there will be a short period of time that they will forget that they don't have legs. And it actually worked. But then we found out that they need physical therapy. So when they need physical therapy, I have to find the money to bring them here. And then I have to schedule all I go to all the physical therapy sessions. I go to all the swimming sessions. I missed last month with all the podcasts and appearances that I've done. I don't do this all the time, you know, and I would never go out and do it for myself because I don't need to tell anybody. I had clients who were with me for more than 10 years. They didn't know that I went to the Olympics, and they would be like, "What? Why didn't you tell us?" I was like, we never had a reason to talk about it. So, you know, it's not like I'm keeping it, but it's not like, I think it's the worst thing that you can have. Sometimes people say, "Hey, this is my friend Loo-beem. He went to the Olympics." You suck out all the air at the room. You know, it's just the worst way to introduce somebody. So I don't like bragging, but I have to brag about what I did for them. And when somebody is when an amputee is rehabbing, there are 3 days of therapies, there are 3 days of swimming. So you have a therapist and you have a coach. I don't really like swimming, but I drive them there, right? I drove, we call him number one because he flew. So I drive him to swimming and I walk by the pool and I watch what he does. When we go to physical therapy, we do physical therapy together because I like I like doing physical therapy. And excuse me. And then there are days when there is no physical therapy. We have homeworks. And what I have to do is you take rubber bands and you hold the amputated limb. You help them to exercise the amputated limbs because they cannot do it alone. So you basically do all these things that I never thought I would be doing this in my entire life, but then just this is what I want to brag about. He finished 1 month of physical therapy, and the leg that he has, it doesn't have a knee. It just basically, there's like this metal bolt and it's nothing there. So he's very limited in terms of mobility, but there is a knee. There is a prosthetic leg that costs $75,000. I'd say it's like a Range Rover, right? But that Range Rover kind of thing, he can run, if they have that, they can run. And they refused him one time, but then he qualified the second time because he was rehabbing here. So when he had his interview, he said, they were closing their folders. They're saying bye-bye. And he said, stop, look, I was 20 years old for 13 days before the full-scale invasion started. And, the guy volunteered, or the kid volunteered. They sent him to fly drones. He flew drones. But he told me that he felt like he was hiding behind civilians. And you looking for mindset, I think you would really appreciate this part. He said, I feel like I'm hiding behind the people. Yeah, I'm fighting, but I'm not fighting like people should be behind me. I should be in front. And for 5 months, he was writing letters to be transferred to an assault brigade. Then he gets transferred to an assault brigade. His commander goes down, and he was the closest guy to his commander. He said he could reach him. He said, I was like this close to him, and he got shot. He has one bullet in his chest, in his bulletproof vest, right in the middle, and he lost a leg. And I asked him, did you know what you were getting yourself into? He says, of course I know. If I fly drones from the back, he says, there's 95% chance that I'll come back home alive and well. And if I am an assault brigade, there is a 95+% chance that I will die or get injured. And I said, if you had to or could do it all over again, what would you do? And he said, I would do the same thing. And I said, okay, we are writing a book. And we actually started writing a book. And July 1st, I put it up on Kickstarter because I got all the information. He left on June 25th, he went home. And next week, I'm going to take some time off and I'm going to sit down and write a book about 20-year-old kid, deciding that I'm going to go to war and not staying behind. And really, his recovery was really terrible because they messed up his amputation and they had to do it the second time. He flew and then it started, I don't know if the correct term is like gangrene, but it started rotting and they had to go in. And they had to cut it again. And he had to relearn how to walk. And he actually, when he came here, like this picture was taken and somewhere between April 9 and 19. That was the session that they came out. He got a prosthetic and he cannot put it on. And he's really frustrated and he's really like struggling with it. And I asked him like, dude, what's going on? We saw a year ago, everything was fine. And he said, I just got it 5 days ago. And they really messed something up that the connection wasn't working. And it was just like heartbreaking watching him go through this thing. But like the world needs to hear his story, because with everything that I've done compared to what they're going through is just, I was having a good time chasing my dreams. His dream was to play professional soccer. And, he left it somewhere on the battlefield. But he plays amputee soccer. he just became a few months ago, he became a captain of his amputee team. So the name of the book, we call it Above It All. Nobody can take away your dreams unless you let them to.
So where can people find that at?
It's on a Kickstarter. It's if you go to wingsforheroes.org. We just got on July 1st, we got approved and we're putting it on our website. So I think when your episode comes out, if you go to wingsforheroes.org, do you post videos and do you post links?
Yeah, when I do, I roll that, all your links and everything will be on there. And then here and shortly, you can tell everybody right now how they can get a hold of you, though.
So the best thing is wingsforheroes.org. It has, first of all, I wrote a story about what I'm going to do. And after April, I rewrote it again about what we've done so far. If you scroll down to the bottom of any page, you will see the videos. So you will get an idea for the spirit and of the mission, and see what we actually do, because it's really cool. Our number one got on the bike, and I just put that video like a week or two ago. He took a bike from one of our volunteers, and first time since the amputation he rode the bike, and it was really, really cool. Then we had team rides, and yeah, wingsforheroes.org has all the information. It will have the information about pre-ordering the book. I have to be honest, I have most of the information. We had a lot of conversations. I allocated time in July to go and write it. And I'm hoping to have it out by the end of the summer, but you can pre-order it. And that's actually, we are self-funded so far, but I'm raising funds because I want to make it 12 times out of the year. I don't want to having sessions is great, and bringing them out when they need physical therapy is great, but it's like starting over every single time. So my goal is to get it going 12 months out of the year. And my goal is to bring the US veterans, amputees. By the way, I am in Turkey, so I want them to fly across the ocean. I want them to be in a country where they don't speak the language, and I want them to become, empowered in the sense that they're not limited, they're unlimited. They're unlimited because they show us, here's the mindset. If you have two hands and you have two arms and you live in the United States, you have no excuse, and the only issue you have is in your mind. And that can be cleared out by looking at guys like this. The guy in red shorts, he has two legs, but one of his ears is stitched. They dropped a hand grenade next to him. It took out one side of his face. He had a plastic surgery. If he's wearing sunglasses, you cannot see that something is wrong with him. But when you see a guy on one leg, you just want to help because he may need help. But if you're looking at somebody who is normal, he cannot hear. He has permanent imbalance in his head and his ears. And I think in many senses, it's difficult for him. So for us, it's a blessing to have all our limbs and all our senses, all our body parts. And if you're listening to this podcast and you have some problems, just go to wingsforheroes.org and just watch, read about these guys and watch the videos and just think about it. Like, imagine if it's hard right now. What if you didn't have a leg or two? One more story. Do we have time, Ryan?
Yeah, go ahead.
Here's how you change the mindset. The guy who's missing the leg, he told me this story. It will be in the book, so I'll give you a little bit of preview. It will be a giveaway. He was going through a lot of psychological issues inside of his head, in terms of recovery, in terms of the future, in terms of how the life could be, and that, I'm a handicapped, I am ugly, I am an invalid, I am done, my dream is gone, I have nothing to live for, this life sucks. And then he says, next to him, when he was transferred, he was next to a guy who was missing both arms like this, and a leg. Really, I found out one thing about amputees. There is a huge difference. If you have a knee, they're saying that it's an assault brigade's dream. That if you have a knee, you can become an assault brigade. You can go back out and fight like, yes, and they do. But if you don't have a knee, it becomes a different issue. And the less you have, the more of your limb is amputated, the more issues you have. So he's saying, I'm laying next to this guy. He has no arms, and his amputation, he said, it was super high, much higher than our guys. So he has only one leg. And that guy's like, I have a 17-year-old kid. I got to get out of here. I cannot spend my time in here. I have to find a way to get out of here and be with my child because I need to raise her. She's not an adult. She's not grown enough. I have to get out of here. And he said, man, I looked at that guy and I said, my life is great. I have no excuses, okay? So that's the mindset that we're talking about. And everything in life is relative. And I think one of the important things is that, people ask how people can help, but I'd say no matter what you do or where you help, there are only 3 ways that you can help. Number one is and I learned it from the Red Cross. I didn't come up with it on my own. I'm not that smart. And number one, you can donate blood, because we have a huge shortage in every state. I was in Wisconsin in April and May. They were organizing blood drives because they have huge shortage, and I actually donated. So the blood that you donate today will most likely save somebody's life today, definitely tomorrow. That's how short our supply is. So donating blood is number one. Number two is volunteering and providing service to somebody who's in need. And that is the biggest help that we can do. Like, if you want to do something that is the biggest thing, volunteer for something. Like, I used to think about soup kitchens, and I was thinking, what's the big deal about a soup kitchen? You just stand there and serve soup to people who don't have a home on Thanksgiving, for example, right? But it's the fact that while you're serving that food, you are spending time and you will never get it back. Never, ever, ever, ever again. You will have those hours. But when you are with people who don't have what you have, you start appreciating what you have. And the feeling of appreciation is one of the strongest, I don't know how to, again, looking for a word. It's something that will drive you. It's something that will move you up. The feeling of appreciation always moves you up in life, 100% of the time. So if you are in a tough situation, find somebody who is in a tougher situation and give them help. Spend some time, provide some service. And the third way is, obviously, there are a lot of missions and there are a lot of charities and causes, and they all require money. And, a lot of times I think about, it's easier just for me to work hard and self-fund it. So I need to put it on pause, like for a year or whatever time, until I go back to the States, I start making money, and then I'm going to fund it. And I know if I go there, it will probably be one-way ticket. And most importantly, when we went to see a physical therapist in April, she said, Loo-beem, if you don't get him back here in May, he may become paralyzed for life. So I just don't have a luxury of taking a pause and, going and self-funding it. Obviously, I would like for your listeners to support our cause, but it doesn't matter what you support. Whatever is important to you. You can donate blood, you can volunteer, provide service, or you can just write a check so other people who are doing important work can use those funds and help the people in need.
Man, I think you have such an amazing mission, man. I like what you've overcome in your own life. Like, you can tell that you were led from and through all that stuff to be where you are now. Yeah. I mean, it's just an amazing thing to watch what you're doing.
Thank you. And I think about that too. And another thing that I would like to share with your listeners is that all the difficult things that you're doing right now, all the difficult times that you're going through right now, anything that is hard is making you acquire the skills that you need to go next level. Like the skills that I had 10 years ago were not enough to do what I'm doing right now. And I had to go through a lot of hardship. Just to give you an idea how hard it was working in Ukraine, there were some days I was paralyzed, like, half of my body. I couldn't move my arm, I couldn't move my leg because of the pressure and the stress. I make a mistake and more than 2,000 families are without a paycheck. And it doesn't matter where you are, but especially in Ukraine was the second poorest country in Europe before the full-scale invasion started. And I was clearly aware that if I make a big mistake and the company fails, all those families and all the consequences are on me. I am the guy. And that emotional pressure, that psychological pressure, the result was that I couldn't move my arms. I was laying there and I was like, what happened? And during difficult times, you learn things that you need to learn to reach that point that, we're all unique. We're all unique. There's not one of us who's doing something small and insignificant. We're all significant for the universe because I really think, we're all interconnected. It's like my best friend used to say, we are all in the same boat, and if a guy somewhere drilling a hole in that boat, then we will all sink. In this case, we're talking about Putin and Russia. He's drilling a hole that may sink this whole boat. And the one thing that is different about the Ukrainian war, actually two, number one, that is in the middle of Europe, that in everyone's psyche for more than 10 years, they're fighting a war. And, it takes one spark for everybody to just start killing each other because they're scared. It's really easy when people are scared, you can do whatever you want with them, We all seen what was happening during COVID. We know that people, were forced to do things that otherwise they wouldn't do. And some people voluntarily did a lot of things that they were told, this is going to save you, without any proof. But the biggest issue that I see right now with the war that is going on in Ukraine, for the first time in the history of the planet, the nuclear blackmail is being used to redraw the map of the world. This has never, ever happened before. Never, Ryan. We are first time. And unfortunately, I don't hear anybody talking about it. I hear about a lot of scaring people, oh, it's going to be a nuclear explosion and we're all dead. It's not going to be like that. Just if somebody is really scared that the world will end if there is a nuclear explosion, just look more closely in how those things work. It would be ugly, no question about it. The consequences would be, we don't know what they would be, but we're not going to split the world. It will be really bad where it drops, but there will be some places that will survive. And yet we have a guy who has, Putin has nuclear weapons and he's using it to blackmail. And I don't think the leaders of the free world are stepping up, and facing it. And I am super sensitive because my dad raised me that Loo-beem, we no blackmail. If somebody's blackmailing you, you die first before you agree to that. And that is how I saved the company in Ukraine, because there was a lot of blackmail going on all levels. And that's one thing that I'm allergic to. And right now, we have a nuclear threat, nuclear blackmail, and the world is not doing enough. And it's threatening, to the United States and everybody. It's not just this isolated conflict, because we have other countries with psychos in charge who have nuclear weapons, and they're watching and they're thinking and they're seeing that, what are you going to do? Nothing. I have a big bomb like that.
Yeah. Well, Loo-beem, I can't thank you enough for coming on here today and sharing your amazing story and your amazing mission with everybody.
One question. Do you have one question for me so we can finish on the positive note? I'm sorry, I don't want to go away with this case.
You've already answered what my one question was. My final question was, what is one piece of advice you'd leave the audience with about overcoming adversity? But you already touched on that right before.
Great. Let me give you, a playbook or, set of things that you can do. Look, if you're facing an adversity, it means that there is something there's a skill that you don't know. There is some information that you don't have you don't have enough to go next level. But you have to go next level. You have to go next level, because adversity means that you haven't really achieved your dreams, and I think adversity will always follow you. If you have no adversity, you're probably dead, right? But if you're facing a situation, really challenging situation, and you need to get out of it, first of all, you make a decision. And it goes like this: I am going to do blank. You're filling the blank. The second one, I will do whatever it takes to get there, and you take the first step. What is the one step that I can take right now that will move me towards my goal? One. And when you're done with that step, you ask the same question: what is the one step that I can take that will move me the closest to my goal? And you keep taking that one step, and don't think about the whole process. Don't perfect everything, because it will get you just frustrated, and it will leave you in a place where you will feel overwhelmed. Just concentrate on one step and keep taking it longer than everybody else, and you will get there. And that's 100% formula. You will just see people dropping left and right, left and right. Meanwhile, you're thinking, what is the one thing that I can do right now that will get me closest to my dream? And that is how you win, my friend. This is how you get out through any adversity in life. One step. You know that what is it? 1,000-mile journey begins with one step.
Yep.
It continues with one step and it ends with one step. It's all about taking one step and not overwhelming yourself.
Great advice. Hey, thank you again for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for having me. And I hope this helps. I hope there's at least one person that will take that step and one day will look back and say, man, I'm glad I listened, because it works. It works for everybody.
And that's what this is all about.
Thank you for creating this space, you know, where we can connect and share stories, because in this day and age, it's very rare. And I'm really grateful for this time that we spent here together.
Yep, so am I.
Thank you.
Well, guys, that's going to be all the time we have here today. Remember, the only way to get what you want is go through the fire.